Here we are again, Flaco.
How's it going, brother?
Pretty good, pretty good. I told you the last time we did that video testimonial interview that there was more I wanted to talk about. We mentioned solitary confinement.
Yes, sir.
And I think that this is a serious subject that is not often talked about. If it is talked about, it's glossed over because everybody wants to be really macho about it. But the reality is it affects so many people negatively that is long lasting and it doesn't go away even when you get out. Would you agree about that?
100%.
Yeah.
100% accurate.
So before we dive in, I did want to read a couple little stats that I printed just to kind of let people know what groundwork we're working out of and what's the foundation of this. So people know we're not making this up. We're not playing a little tiny violin for ourselves either. This stuff is real and it affects a lot of people, more people than we know. It's almost like an underworld that civilians don't even know about. Would you agree with that?
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, so check this out. This was a report written in October of 2020, just less than a year ago. And it says that in the United States, where the use of solitary confinement is widespread, an estimated 80,000 people are held in some form of isolation on any given day. That's like more than a stadium holds, right? So then it says, and in a single year, over 10,000 people were released to the community directly from solitary. So as you hear as you hear us talking, those of you that are watching, I want you to keep that in mind. What we're talking, this is just two of us, 10,000 people released to your community in 1 year. 10,000 people straight from solitary. So the second stat I have is that it says the psychological effects of solitary confinement are well documented and terrifying. 15 days locked up in solitary can be enough to cause permanent psychological damage, with effects ranging from anxiety to paranoia to inability to form coherent thoughts. This was in 2017. 15 days, they say, is all it takes. I myself have seen men break in solitary confinement, so I don't know. I'm just gonna let you talk right now for a little bit and then I'll chime in.
Well, for me, man, I have years in AdSeg solitary confinement, man. Going back to the mid 90s, I was already going into AdSeg on a numerous times for little offenses here and there. And I ended up, by 1999, I ended up becoming validated as what they called the Northern Structure member. And back then, when you were validated, it didn't matter if you did a pegada, you got in a fight, or if you had no type of infractions. If they wanted to classify you as a gang member, they would lock you up in the shoe and they would throw away the key. And the only way to get out would be to debrief. And so in my tenure, man, I've gone through about, 7 different prison AdSegs. I've been to San Quentin. I've been to Solano. I've been to CMC East. I've been to Salinas Valley. I've been to Delano. I've been to New Folsom. And I've been to DVI. As well as I've done time in my own Santa Clara County Jail, as well as Santa Rita, Alameda County Jail, which you're familiar with as well.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, man, I've seen numerous times where people just go in there normal. And within just about a month, next thing you know, they're doing things that are unthinkable. I've seen people take their own feces and start writing on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first occasion when I actually seen someone commit suicide. I didn't witness it, but they were my neighbor. And then the next thing you know, they were suffering from triple CMS and EOP, which at that time, that's which you would call the J category. Like you've heard the terminology JCAT.
Yeah.
But these are people with psychological issues. And so the worst thing I could tell you about solitary confinement is the treatment, how you're treated in there. You're looked at as less than a human being. There was times where I'd go, I think it was a total of 11 months when I was down south in San Luis Obispo, where I hadn't even seen outside, no type of yard activity. It's a place to where the prison administration, they like to suppress the things that you are entitled to as an inmate, whether you're a troublemaker or not. There's a limited. I think there's a limit in how you treat individuals. I get it. If you're disciplinary action, you have to suffer some type of consequences. But the confines of someone being in solitary confinement, man, it's the most lonely, desperate place to where you're lost mentally. You go through so many different thoughts in your head, man. I know for myself, man, numerous times I'd have to hold on and not let it get to me. But there's so many people that I've witnessed who go in there normal, and next thing you know, man, they're affected for life.
Yeah.
Worst part about it is you're not offered any type of services or treatment. You talk about 10,000 people parole in a year from ADSEG. Every time I parole from prison, I paroled from ADSEG. And in there, you're not given any type of rehabilitation as far as opportunities to get a trade, how to pre-release. They had this thing called pre-release that they would give you. I never got it. Not one time did I ever get any type of pre-release work. So you're thrown away like cattle, basically.
Yeah.
Just stop. And you're not even being rehabilitated. And for us, the way we used to function, the only way we could rehabilitate ourselves was our own type of structure program, our own type of discipline. But not everybody has that, man. You see good people go in there, and next thing you know, they're affected, man. You know, it's the most cruelest and unusual punishment that I've ever experienced, man. And I'm going to tell a story, right, for you. My worst situation as far as being in solitary confinement, and you could see the type of abuses that they torment people with. Now, that's not to say I don't believe that the majority of the correctional officers or police officers are bad, not in any form or fashion. But there's a lot of them who just go to do their 9 to 5, and they see the abuses that happen. It just occurs. It's just business. But there are those who like to inflict punishment. And so I went down south. Okay. I was in Solano. I got into a little melee. If anybody doesn't know what a melee, it's not a mutual combat. It's where it's a group fight. And we got off into it with some Nazis in Solano. So based upon administration having some type of reprisal actions because they were fed up with who I was, they decided to send me down south to a prison down in San Luis Obispo. I only ended up on the yard for about 6 hours, and I caught a battery on an inmate because I was the only active northerner that touched down on that yard. And this was a yard with about 400 Southsiders, Bulldogs, and a bunch of dropouts. And at that time, I was fully active. I mean, Mongolian and everything. And so I get to the hole. There's a couple homeboys in there, and someone came through that had some funny style things on them. That was one of ours at the time. And I ended up doing what I had to do in the shower. So they ended up taking me from a tier. These were floors at the time, and putting me on a floor where there was 44 sureños and 2 NLRs that were being validated. They put me in the last cell. Now, this was a different time era. There wasn't no mutual respect back then.
Yeah.
So every time I was being taken down the tier, they were trying to spit on me. They were trying to throw piss on me. They were calling me Buster, Farmer, all that stuff. You know what I mean? I know this is different time age, but I'm trying to show my experience. And so, because of my violent nature, they thought, right, it wasn't really violent, is that they were putting me in predicaments to where who I was, I couldn't be around those type of people. We eventually, things changed, and there were some homeboys there, and I wanted to go to group yard. And at that time, they weren't allowing me to go to yard because they were running all the group yards first. And then if you were walking one, you'd be lucky. So I was there for 6 months with no yard, nothing. And so I went to ICC, right? And I asked to go to yard because there was finally some people I go to yard with. And I told them that you guys aren't giving me yard like I'm planning. I filed all the 602s and all that, and they should just throw them away. And so I got mad. I kicked over the table, and I tried to rush the associate warden. Not a very smart move on my end, right? So I get hemmed up. Bear in mind, I'm probably about 19 years old at the time, and I was very revolutionary at that time. I used to read up on the Zapatistas, Subcomandante Marcos and Chiapas, and I was, to the left. Everything, I was against the system at that time. So I was studying all kinds of revolutionary stuff. And so I was trying to fight for our rights as far as in solitary confinement, reading stuff like George Jackson, Amul Jamal, all those individuals. I was studying all this stuff. And I believed in the plight for equal justice.
Yeah.
And so they ended up taking me out of that cell, and they go take me down to Central, and they put me in a management cell. This was a cell within a cell.
A management? Okay. You said a management cell?
Management cell. Okay. They put me in there for 7 days. Okay. Technically, they're supposed to only keep you in there until a site comes to see you. But a captain came in and talked to me and said, "You're staying here for a week," because
Wow.
the associate warden was mad at me. Now, this cell, what they elected to do was they tried to twist it on me and say like I was suicidal, which I wasn't. They took all my clothes. They left me stripped butt naked. They wouldn't let me have a mattress, a blanket, or anything. There was a concrete slab, right?
Yeah.
I had no running water, no shower for a week. They elected to feed me, right? But there was no reading material, no nothing, no one to even talk to for a whole week.
What size was this cell, roughly?
Um, Man, it was like a weird. It looked like almost like a small holding tank. It wasn't that big,
Okay.
you know, but it was like a little metal slab. It was like weird. That was only this much off the floor.
Wow.
And I saw I was butt naked for a whole week.
No no hygiene, nothing.
All
No, you couldn't take
no
bird baths,
hygiene,
nothing.
no soap, no anything. Couldn't even brush my teeth. That's the worst experience I ever experienced, man. All because the associate warden had an axe to grind against me. Now, per procedures, they weren't supposed to do that. My mom even came up to visit me, and they made it turn around. She wrote a letter, and they tried to self-justify, saying that in the past I had flooded the tier, which I never have.
Yeah.
Um, that I was a threat to myself, so they didn't want to give me no bedding. You know what I'm saying? So they made all these excuses because she wrote a complaint. And I tried to file all kinds of 602s. And all that ended up happening in Aztec at that time is I suffered repercussions. Like they started hitting my cell. They started doing a lot of different things. They would skip me on showers. And bear in mind, this was a prison that was down south. So it was kind of a little bit worse being from up north.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a lot of those games being played. And that was one of the worst experiences I have in solitary confinement, man. I mean, that was the ultimate abuse. And I'm not the only one that experiences stuff like that. You get a lot of people coming in that do break, that have mental issues. And I've seen it, man, to where they go up in cells and then they just start to attack them, or they won't even take them out for days for showers or anything like that.
Yeah.
Once you're in solitary confinement, you no longer control any type of your movements. You know what I'm saying? It's always being around by the prison system, as you know. You did
Yeah.
a lot of time as well. But you do have a little bit room to wiggle and experience a little bit of normalcy, a little bit, some type of program. And there you're in your cell, and all you could do is think, man, and stress out, and just you feel so isolated from the world. You feel lonely, like even though you feel like you're in a world away from a world that no one knows that you're there.
I always call it like being in a coffin,
Yeah.
and a see-through coffin, a glass coffin, and life is passing you by is the best way I can describe it myself. You know, did you ever every cell has that metal mirror, supposed to be a mirror, but it's all scratched up and whatnot. In solitary, man, it got so bad that I would look at myself and reaffirm myself, because I was not this number. My name was David Rocha, and I was a dad, and I had children. I would have to speak to myself in the mirror to keep sane.
Fortunately, you know how it is. You get to sometimes talk to neighbors in the vent. You know what I mean? It's a little bit easier in the county jail. It's like Santa Rita and stuff because
Yeah.
You get your little hour every 3 days sometimes if you're lucky. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Half the time when you come out for your little hour, what are you doing? You're running water for everybody.
Yeah.
But in the hole, it was a little bit different, man. Like you don't like as far as in the prison in the shoe, you don't have like when I was in Corcoran shoe, right? You were only able to go out for maybe your shower was like 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then you had to shave at the same time. So you're shaving without even being able to look at your face. You know what I'm saying? So if you had any type of like a little ojo, little mirror, you were
Yeah.
fortunate, man, like or a little razor. And then the razors, it was so scary because people up in Pelican Bay were catching Hep C. Because
Oh,
what the guards were doing was, say people were using their razors, they weren't checking what cells they were going, they were just throwing them into any little container. And so a
wow.
lot of people got exploited through Hep C. And that's the type of thing in the ad seg is you have no control at all. Like in the main
Yeah.
line, you have a little bit of control. The shoe, you have access to a TV if you're fortunate, if you have people taking care of you. But even then, man, it's you still feel so isolated from the world, man. And you don't have a mirror. I mean, I had a chip bag,
Yeah.
inside a little Cheeto chip bag. You made
Yeah.
that from a little mirror, and you still can't see yourself, man.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
it's like the places where I've spent solitary was Sacramento County Jail on the 8th floor, North County in Oakland, and in
yeah,
Santa Rita. once I got into the federal system, I was on the main line, but by the time the feds, man, the wheels of court are really slow. So by the time, from the moment I got arrested to the time I actually hit the yard in Terminal Island was, I think, like 2 years and 3 months. And a year, a year of that was in Santa Rita in the hole. And then in Sacramento, I think it was 45 days, so my first time in the hole was in Sac, and that was for 45 days. And that's not a long time, but my light was broken. So you know how you could click on it and it's like low, and then the second one, and then full beam. Have you ever been in Sac County?
No, I've never been to Sac County.
Yeah, they have those lights in your cell where no matter what, you can't turn your light off. So it's basically 1, 2, or 3. It's low, bright, and then really bright. Mine was stuck on really bright for 45 days. I was stuck in that cell for 45 days, and I lost complete track of time. I didn't know when it was night, when it was day. It was just full on. And then all they had was a little sheet. So I couldn't really cover my eyes because the sheet was so thin. And I was just straight 45. And somebody might say, oh, that ain't hard. Let me see somebody do it. It is not. It is not as easy as it sounds to be in a room with the full light, full blast for 45 days straight, man. And like I said, it's little things like that just saying it almost sounds silly, but when you're in that predicament, man, it messes with your head. You got to be really headstrong, to be honest with you. And if it wasn't for God, I probably would have went crazy too, just like everybody else, a lot of the others did,
So you see, that's the thing with solitary confinement is you got to learn ways to occupy your mind. And I used to break up my schooling down different. Like I'd wake up, I'd bust down, I'd bird bath and clean the cell. And I started to study different languages, like Nahuatl. You know what I'm saying? Get the source and study new words, and then legal law. Then I would do a little bit of history, whether it would be like, on the Chiapas movement that was going on at that time, or a little bit of history, Native American history, like, or even Euro-Asia history. I mean, whatever it may be. Then I started studying philosophy, like Plato the Republic or Friedrich Nietzsche. Then I started to study other books like Steve Pinker, How the Mind Works. So then I started studying the stock market. So the thing that saved me is I always occupied my mind. I never let it become idle, because there was times when I did let it get idle, and those were the most stressful, lonely times. There was nothing worse than being in an environment to where I was the only one and no one was talking to me.
Yeah.
Like literally, like no one was talking to me. Only time they were talking to me, they were cussing me out. I mean, a bunch of names. And that's just how it was in the 90s. It was a very treacherous time. Like I said, I've experienced every different type of hole, man. And it's different everywhere. I mean, some places you have a cellie, which makes a little bit of difference, but it's kind of hard even having a cellie because it's an intimate environment. You're locked up with someone 24/7. By then you want your space, but then once you have your space, you start to get lonely. So, I mean, and then they also have the vents that people don't realize, man, blowing cold air. And then some people want to clog them up, and then there's no air circulation, man. It just makes everything kind of difficult, man. I've gone through some hard times, man. Like, 2 of my kids, I was in solitary confinement. When my oldest daughter was born, I had to look at her through a glass window.
Yeah, I remember seeing my youngest daughter, the one that graduated, the one I remember seeing her walk for the first time when I was in solitary confinement through glass in the window. And man, it's just for me, man, I feel it's torture. I understand. I understand the necessity of it. I get it, because sometimes some people are too dangerous to be around others. But the fact is, when you put people in there for reasons that they shouldn't be in there, or even nonviolent offenders, or just if they just feel like it, that should be labeled as torture, man. I'm a huge advocate against solitary confinement because it messes with you, and even though, like you said, I found the same. I learned my own way that I had to find a program every single day, because if not, the days melt into each other, and the nights and the days and everything melts into each other. And to me, that's the beginning of madness, so I would create a program from the moment of what you do in the morning to breakfast, what you do between breakfast and lunch, what you do between lunch and dinner, and then what you do in the evening. Everything had to be structured, because if not, you would lose your mind. And it was there. I thank God, like it was in solitary confinement where God called me to preach, you know, and I thought my mind was so crazy, you know, sometimes like different thoughts, you just thoughts, all you're doing is thinking of thoughts. And I remember this. I remember I couldn't wait to sleep at night because I would dream of the outside world. I would dream of my kids. I would dream of just being walking in the mall or being in Walmart. And but then I'd wake up in there, and that almost made it worse, you know. But then I remember after a few months, maybe 5 or 6 months in, and I'm not a person to have nightmares. I'm not. You know, I don't even have dreams really that I remember when I wake up. But every night was just dreams, just horrible nightmares, you know. So I'm like, man, I'm tortured being awake, and the moment I close my eyes, I'm tortured in my sleep, you know. And
You're making me making me have a flashback right now.
that's
You know,
that's and Flaco, honestly, that's the kind of talk I want to have, a real talk about this, man, because it really greatly affects us, you know. It does, man. And I remember we were watching this Netflix show about these little I think 4 or 5 black kids in New York where they got incarcerated really young. Did you ever see that documentary?
where they were innocent
Yeah.
about that park homicide or something like that.
Yeah, wait, no, was it that one or the other one about some kid? Hold on. Broward or something like that. There was a couple documentaries, man. But anyways, one of them, it was a short series, like 6 or 7 episodes, and I think episode 3, 4, something like that, he was thrown into solitary, and I want to say it was maybe like episode 5. So me and my wife were watching it. We're like, man, that's crazy. That's messed up what happened to him. Episode 2, man, wow, man, that's messed up. But then on that episode, I didn't even realize that when it showed him in solitary confinement, because it actually showed footage from the cameras in the jail or the prison. It showed him in isolation, and it's weird because my reaction, bro, I completely like almost hyperventilated, and I started crying like a child, man. And it was the weirdest thing because I didn't expect that. If somebody would tell me, hey man, tell me about solitary, I would just talk to him. But to see it visually and seeing somebody suffer through it, it made it all come back, you know. And that has happened to me maybe about 3 times now since I've been released, you know. Just something triggers and I realize, man, that's crazy. This place affected me, man. And it bothers me that I let something affect me, but sometimes psychologically you can't help it. I mean, what says the psychological effects of solitary confinement are well documented, you know, and it's like enough to cause permanent psychological damage. And I'll say this, Flaco, real quick before I turn it to you, is this. I'm gonna be honest, man. I struggle to this day with actually having feeling, and I think a callousness grew. And don't get me wrong, I get moved, but I notice and remember that I was different before. You know, I'm not the type to cry at a movie. You know, I never was, but I would actually feel like if it was a sad scene or whatever, I would feel some type of sadness or whatever. And I notice now ever since that time, ever since then, it's harder for that emotion to break through. And maybe that's just me, man. I don't know.
No, it's kind of funny how I in our last video I talked about how I wasn't able to show him no emotions for years until my son was took into a CPS case. And now that makes complete sense, that those strict confines that I went through, it taught me to have no emotion because that was the only way to survive.
Yeah, you can't survive with
you know, and in the places I was at, it was very treacherous. I mean, the doors were cracking, it was getting off.
Yeah.
You know, they were playing a lot of mind games. So you didn't have time to, you know what I mean, look into things like for a higher power. I did later on see a lot of people, and I want to touch on this too, is I noticed the one time where I see a lot of people turn to God was in solitary confinement, believe it or not.
That's where I got saved, bro.
But the difference I see though is this is where I commend you, is you've continued that same track. I've seen people go in there, they start to preach the Bible and they start to get into it, they share it and all that. And then, you know, God helps them during that time of need. But once they get out to the streets, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And they go back to those old behaviors. You know, I've had a couple friends like that that were doing that. People I was talking to and trying to mentor them that were going through their issues, they
Yeah.
were turning to God, which was a good thing. You know, I believe that is a solution for most people. And then they turn to God in a time of need, which solitary confinement is a time of need to turn to God, man. It is a
Yeah.
place where you can find Him, because that is the most worst type of feeling that you could ever feel. And I never thought about that, man, because after doing time in the hole and doing time in the shoe, when I would get locked up, you know what I mean? I've done a lot. I've done probably, I'd say maybe close to about eight years total solitary confinement, maybe more. And I think the longest stretch I ever did of solitary confinement, I believe, was about, I think, 3.5 years straight.
Yeah. Wow.
To where when I would come off the streets, it would only take me about a couple of days to adapt to being
Yeah.
back in solitary confinement. And that's not a good feeling, man. It's
Yeah.
not, you know, and that's the mental part of it that we're discussing here, is that we don't see the adverse effects later on in life, man, and the emotional part and being distraught towards people. That's a
Yeah.
common theme I see with a lot of people who've done shoot time. And a lot of times we feel when we're dealing with people, like as far as in the regular society is what I call it now today, because I look at myself as a citizen,
Yeah.
but I understand when I'm dealing with people, they haven't been at the places I've been or experienced the things I've seen. So it's hard for me to relate when I hear people going through their little struggles. It's like struggles. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Try being in a box 24/7 where you may get yard once a week. Try being there 24/7 when you don't even know if you're going to get your commissary or canteen. Try being there for 24/7 when you don't know if you're going to shower till next week or what laundry you got coming. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or if your light's going to be left on, or if you got to drink the dirty water in Tracy, or whatever it may be. You know, it's the worst type of torment and abuse is solitary confinement, man. I mean, I used to trip on this, man. Death row had more rights and privileges than we get in solitary confinement.
I heard.
You know,
I heard.
and I've experienced every single different asset that you could think of, man. Like I said, I've been to I think 7 prisons and 2 county jails, and each one was the same type of tactics in there. It was this is for a lot of them, they're just doing their job. I get it, but the prison administration doesn't have enough resources, or they don't allocate their funding right
Yeah.
into mental health. And I think that not only does that have to do with prison, but I think on the streets as well.
Mhm.
Because I would see people come in, like I said, with mental issues and have their mental breakdowns, and they were only getting treatment maybe for like 10 minutes a week. A psych would come knock on their doors, talk to them through a door. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, here's some medication. And
Yeah.
next thing you see is a bunch of zombies, and that's how they dealt with the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
But
look at solitary confinement is no solution. There's nothing good that comes of it. I mean, you're deteriorating people's minds. I mean, in some form or fashion. Those of us that may be strong or have the discipline, we can get through it. But we don't see all the effects that it goes on with us.
yeah. I think I agree completely. I think it's even affected me in my marriage, and just trying to open up. You know what I mean? Just trying to open up and open my heart, and open as one should with their spouse. You know what I mean? And I think it affects us in many ways that maybe we don't even realize, or we even care to even admit to ourselves. I remember one of the worst things though is let's say you get out every third day, 1 hour, you can shower, use the phone or whatever, talk to somebody in another cell. Sometimes it depends if they let you, but calling home, getting bad news. And then as soon as you get bad news, they tell you your hour's up and you got to lock it down.
Oh
And
yeah.
now all you have in your mind was mom is sick, dad, your kid, your daughter, something. And that's all that plays. And it just, has that ever happened to you?
You know what, me, I've had times to where like I had the worst thing I think that I probably experienced in there was probably a relationship loss while I was in there, based upon being an asset and not being able to have the communications, and you feel helpless.
Yeah.
Um, Besides that, it was hard for my family. I was married at one time, and she used to come try to see me like once every 2 months or 3 months, but it was hard being a single mother. And a lot of times I'd be selfish and I'd be writing those hateful letters like, why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? Not realizing the situation I put them in by me being there.
Yeah.
difficult for them just to come see me and look at me through a glass window, you know, and they did not want to. They did not want my kids to see me that way. I remember my little daughter used to come see me when she was like 2, 3 years old. She didn't even really know who I was,
Wow.
and that was a sad feeling. You know what I mean? Because when
Yeah.
she was first born, she was daddy's girl, and the next thing you know, I've been gone for years. They send me all over the place, and you can't get visits right away because you know how the visiting is in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
Uh, it's very short lived. Your people have to set up the appointment, and they have to show up.
Yeah.
That was the hard part. You know what I mean? Not being able to see my kids, not being able to make a phone call because in prison, you don't have phone access.
Wow.
And your mail's coming probably it's taking 10 days to maybe 30 days to get a letter.
Yeah.
News that you may have already got, maybe like news from already a month, and you can't even respond to it,
Wow.
you know?
And that is a torture unto itself.
Oh, most definitely, because you're hoping, did they get my letter? And you never know because with me, because of gang affiliations, every letter I had going out was being screened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take it, they would look through it, and then I would sit there and get visits, right? And then ask, did you get my letter? Right? And then
Yeah.
this would be 2 weeks after I sent it out, and they would say that they haven't even got my letter. And the
Wow.
same thing, did you get my letter? I sent it 3 weeks ago with pictures. No, I haven't got it. And that's the kind of things that happen when you're in administration segregation.
Yeah.
You don't have that daily access you have to your family.
You
You
know,
can't get
yeah.
on a phone call. You can't just have a personal visit. You can't have these things that you need to be rehabilitated because what prison administration forget is you got to have incentives and privileges for certain inmates.
Yeah.
You got to have those visits, those phone calls for them to look forward to. But when you strip them of all those rights, it's going to there's a cause and effect in everything. And the way they used to lock down people, man, like I said, it would be for petty stuff sometimes, you know what I mean? Or alleged gang affiliations, whatever it may be. They used to justify having people slammed down. And then you had to be in there. There was no like really due process like you would
Yeah.
have in a criminal court case. It was what we used to call kangaroo court. If the CO said that you did this and did that, you were locked up and they could implement any type of punishment they wanted.
Yeah.
They had a little set guidelines. Okay, this carried 3 to 6 months, 9 months. And how they used to keep you in the hole longer is they would put you up for transfer. And then something would go wrong in CSR. Oh, we have to re-put you up for endorsement again. Next thing you know, you're waiting to go to a main line at another prison, but yet you've been sitting in the hole for 6 months, 7 months.
Wow.
I've seen a lot of crazy stuff in there, man. Like I said, I've seen people, like I told you, a person committed suicide, had a sheet around his neck. You know what I mean? Another person tried to put her around their private area, tried to cut themselves off. Other people, started to cut themselves. Other people overdosed on drugs and pills trying to take their lives. And you know, I I was fortunate that I had enough discipline in myself
Yeah.
not to let it get to me, but don't think it didn't affect me. And it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what I wanted to do this video about, was just the realness of it. Like a lot of people don't know this, man. It's interesting that you say in solitary, a lot of people turn to God and they use it basically as a crutch until they get out of solitary. But for me, I gave my life to the Lord in solitary, and about halfway through that year, I realized something, and I almost wanted to forget God. And a lot of people don't know this about Pastor David, you know what I mean? But um, I almost wanted to just say, God, forget it. Here's why. Because you know that verse that says, I'll take out your heart of stone and I'll put in a heart of flesh. And I said, God, I don't need a heart of flesh in this place, because I actually, by having a heart of flesh, I feel the pain more. Because if I had my heart of stone, I could just fill it with hate and with anger, and this place won't affect me as much as it's affecting me as a Christian. Does that make sense? You
that
know,
makes that makes total sense right there, brother.
and I'm almost like, God, you know what? I can't be here as a Christian because I'm too sensitive to what's going on. Can I just have my heart of stone back? I said, and when I get out of here, I'll serve you. You know what I mean? But I mean, long story short, I apologized to the Lord, and I said, Lord, you know what? No, I don't want you to leave me. I don't. But I mean, I contemplated that because of that very same reason, is I didn't want to feel. And being a Christian is all about this being open, you know? And yeah, man, that was rough.
You know, that's I'll be real too. I think the first time I read the Bible all the way through, the whole thing, was in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try something new. Because I started realizing, this is for all the listeners out there who are still struggling with whatever you're struggling with, addiction or life issues. If you're doing things over and over again, and you're getting the same results, you know what I mean, and you're trying to do things your way, ask yourself, how's that working for you? And that was my first step to turning everything over to God. Was every time I tried to do things my way,
Yeah.
the results were the same over and over again. And that was the insanity. And a lot of it was, a lot of my things later on in life were coming from being in that setting.
Yeah.
That's how I was used to living my life, at the most comfortable. It's sad because, either it's going to break you or you become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And as bad as it was, I was comfortable being in the shoe. It was like a second home. I can go in there. I know how to program. My mattress is rolled up. I'm writing letters all day. I'm busting down, cleaning the cell. And that's sad to feel that's some type of normalcy. And I don't think we talk about that part, is that
Yeah.
for some of us, yeah, it break us as far as our mental capacity, but that we start to think that this is normal and it's okay. It's not okay to be in those confinements. It's
Yeah.
not a good thing, man.
I think that it's interesting you brought that up, and I'm glad you did, because I'll say two things. When the marshals finally came to pick me up, it was a weird feeling because all I wanted was to get out of that cell. But when they told me, hey, roll your stuff up, get your stuff ready to go. Marshals are coming to pick you up and they're taking you, because I was waiting to get taken to prison. This was in Santa Rita. And to be honest with you, after being in that cell for that year, I felt nervous to leave. I almost didn't want to leave. It was like my little cave, and I did not want to leave, and it felt weird. I remember them cuffing me up and pulling me out of my cell, and it felt like they're ripping me away from home. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, you start to feel comfortable with it, like it's the norm.
Yeah. And it's real quick. The second thing is the fact that I realized, see, I've only experienced, I mean, yeah, I had 30 days solitary, the 45 days, but when I did this year, it was really hard for me, bro, because that was my first time. And I'll be honest with you, that God forbid I ever end up in a hole again unless it's for Christ, and the last days, the Bible says that, I mean, Christians are going to be hated, so I realized that it's people like us that are already conditioned for this. When that time comes, that we will be able to help those believers because we've been there and done that already. But I realize this is that I think that if I would ever get put in that situation again, exactly like you said, now I know. Before it was psychological because it was all new to me, but now I realize I can do that. And it's not a good thing to be like, yeah, man, I can handle solitary, but it's a fact, because I think now I would condition my mind, boom, right away, instead of letting it condition with 4 or 5 months, because it was all new to me.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you feel the solution is with this problem?
Well, I think it goes back to a lot of things. Number one is, years ago they took a lot of funding away from people that had mental disorders. So you got the jails full of people that shouldn't be in jail. They should be somewhere else. So yeah, another thing is that in most other countries, jail is not a means of punishment, it's a means of rehabilitation. And there's no rehabilitation going on. If it wasn't for me studying the word of God, I would not have came out rehabilitated as a Christian man. But nobody there is the whole thing here is United States it's a money maker when it's supposed to be a place to, here's why. And I know I'm kind of real passionate about this subject, so I'm glad you asked, is the fact that this, man, is that people say, who cares about those inmates? Who cares about them? This is why you should care if you're watching this, because 90% of them have a release date. So if they're in solitary, if they're writing on the walls with feces, if they're screaming and kicking their cell all night, if they're screaming and doing this and doing that and biting and trying to bite an officer, these are people without rehabilitation, without help, are going to come out to your city, your community, your block. So this is why this is America's problem. This is not a prison problem. This is all of our problem, man, because, put it this way. I joke around. I tell people, yeah, the crime rate in Tracy went down when I got locked up, and then and it stayed that way when I got saved. And I'm joking around, you know what I mean? But the point is made is that would you rather somebody come out rehabilitated, serving God, or even just rehabilitated, my God, with some kind of degree, some kind of something, than them coming out 10 times worse than when they went in?
I've said the same thing, man. I think that they need to have more programs that are workable programs that give these guys incentives. Like right now, in the state of California, I have a lot of friends that live out there. One of the biggest things is trade schools, going to construction, electricians. And so I threw this idea out there, man, that, the government needs to have more, interactions and programs with certain small businesses or certain unions and stuff like that, to where people that are in prison, they can go through certain programs and learn a trade like carpentry or, HVAC or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. And then have these people who have contracts with the government to where when these people are paroled, you know what I'm saying, that the state will forge over maybe half their wages for the first 6 months to get these people in the door. Because a lot of inmates or convicts, whatever you want to call them, if you're given the opportunity once you get out at a good high paying job at a reasonable wage that you could, what I call a livable wage, a lot of them are going to take that and they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
But you don't, and give maybe these private owners a tax break for hiring these people who are getting out. They got to have some type of program, because just throwing us people in there in solitary confinement, like I said, I never got any type of rehabilitation whatsoever. The only rehabilitation I got was from other homeboys and for myself. I self-taught myself. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had to do college courses. I had to do all this different
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? I didn't receive nothing from the state. No type of pre-release program. I didn't learn no trades, no nothing. You know what I mean? Fortunately for me, I was able to establish myself every time I got out. But I was also doing a lot of illicit things too, just to get ahead in life.
Yeah. So, little moth here. Something else you said earlier, and I wanted to piggyback off of that, is that I didn't release from solitary to the street. I actually went to solitary, and then I went to the main line in Terminal Island, and then I went to a prison camp in Atwater for my last 2 years out of my sentence. And even that, releasing from a camp has one CO and no barbed wire, and it's dorm living. So there's no cells. And that was a culture shock for me from there to the streets. So I cannot even fathom having been in solitary, like you said, and releasing straight to the streets. Now, mind you, I came out a Christian, but had I not came out a Christian and just, I can't even imagine being active, a non-believer, and no rehabilitation, from solitary, and all of a sudden you find yourself on a major street corner.
And I'll tell you like this: my first time out after doing, I did 5 years straight. I was supposed to get on 2.5. I ended up maxing out, and I think I did the last like I said 3.5 years in the shoe, ad 6 shoe. It was such a change to where I went to a place called Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, I've been there. Milpitas?
Right? Yeah. And I was with two of my homeboys and everything, and they tripped on me because I was looking around everywhere. If someone got too close to me, I was jumping the edge of it because I wasn't used to that social interaction from nobody. You know what I mean? And at that time, it was straight war on the shoe. If the doors popped open, it was on and cracking.
Yeah.
So like I'm tripping because I've had I can't even act right. I don't even feel comfortable. I didn't even know how to interact with people at first. You know what I mean? It took me a while to acclimate after the streets. I did not feel normal. And I think that's why, like when I was out there, I was running loose and drinking and engaged in criminal activities. I know there was other reasons, but the only time I felt comfortable was being a criminal because I never had no rehabilitation. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
What I knew how to do was be a criminal, and do that on a high level. I mean, you know what I mean? And therefore I did not know how to be a normal citizen.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't ingrained in me. I didn't have those trade skills. My whole thing was even in the real world, when I did have jobs, I was trying to manipulate my way while I was there.
Yeah.
So you start to get ingrained with a convict mentality, and I never thought about how bad solitary confinement has affected me and some of the PTSD I have to this day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not wanting to be in contained quarters, and just the flashbacks of all the things that I've seen and, the crazy stuff, man. It's a trialing experience.
So
It's something.
so you do admit that that solitary has affected you.
Yes, not without a doubt, man. It's affected me.
Um,
I had hard times. Like now, I'm a little bit better. I think
yeah,
because I have a spiritual program today. You know what I mean? And that's changed me in a lot of ways. But I say for all these years, man, like all my problems were self-created. I think by being in solitary confinement. I did not know how to adjust to the real world. I had my own vision in my head that I think I created, but being in solitary confinement of how I thought the world was supposed to be, and it's mystified just the things that I used to think.
yeah,
Not realizing that's not the beat that they walk to out there in the streets. It was something totally different. Like even my relationships were hard. They affected my relationships. And
yeah.
I think it took me years. I haven't found any normalcy in my life until the last 5 years, and I'd say more along the lines of the last 2.5, because I had a lot of work and I was working in progress. Um,
Yeah.
but now I can reflect back and I can look at the little things that were controlling me. And, I had a lot of resentments doing time and being in the shoe and being away and the solitary confinement and the treatment. And now I'm able to spiritually live, you know what I mean? And that's the
Yeah.
great thing about having Jesus in your life is we may still be affected by some of these things that we have in our
Yeah.
past, but he's there for us and we can get through it. And that's
Yeah.
one thing
That's
I
right.
learned, man,
That's right. You
is
know.
I'm able to get through these problems. And like I said, like in my relationships, I did not know how to be in a normal relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know how to communicate. Same things you discussed. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to do none of that. The only time I felt comfortable, it's like that's why I lived a life of crime every time I got out because that's all I ever knew. You know
You
what I
know,
mean? Let's go to the shoe.
we it's funny how you said earlier, you had said, as we're kind of coming to a close, you had said that doing time in the shoe, you're used to it, you're accustomed to it. But here's the thing, that statement in itself is a psychological issue, because people are created to be social. We're created to be around people. We're created like, I don't know if this is true or not. Have you ever heard that experiment where they had these babies long time ago and nobody talked to them, nobody loved them, nothing, and they died? I don't know if that's true or not, but it brings the truth out, is that we need social, we need, camaraderie. We need to talk to someone. And why do you think that movie with Wilson, what's it called, Castaway? That's why he had to create Wilson, because he had to create something to communicate with. And I think that's for me. That's why I thank God now for that solitary confinement, because it forced me to look at God and him be the only one I could communicate with. Because before that, my life was filled with just craziness and music videos and autograph signings and people and fans and I filled, and homeboys, and I filled my life up with so much noise that when I actually hit solitary confinement, God's like, now do I have your attention? And it was this thing where he became my best friend. I would read the scriptures as if it was him writing it to me. And I would laugh at stuff. I would cry at stuff. I would, you know what I mean? And it just, and I'm just, it was I have a love-hate relationship with solitary confinement, because I hated it, but at the same time, it has made me the Christian man that I am today. Because I was able to solidify who I am and who he is, and nobody else did the time with me but God.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you think about it, that's I'm just curious in my head. I'm thinking, what would have happened if you didn't go to solitary confinement?
I know.
That's
I know.
just the honest thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was serving God before that, because I was in Sac County. I was in an active pod. But what if I would have ended up being one of those that leave the Bible at the gate? I don't know. That's why I now, it's a weird love-hate relationship I have with solitary. It was probably the worst time of my life and the best time of my life, because it took solitary confinement to set me free.
Though that you made a good point though. That's one time where I think I communicated with God the most.
Yeah.
solitary confinement, to where that's the first time I started to feel him talk to me in ways that I can't explain unless someone else experienced it. You mean? Just,
Hmm.
you have your own vision of your communication with God up in your head. And the fortunate thing for me is I've been able to continue that path out here on the streets, that same relationship. But a lot of people don't, man.
Yeah.
And it is a good place for people to get that spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
But people can't forget, and that's one thing I got to stress to anybody out there. And this is going to be off topic, man. But for anybody who's been personally going through things, and if God touches you, or someone guides leads you to God, and He touches you in ways to where you have that spiritual awakening, don't take that for granted. Maintain it. Let it grow. Let that seed that flower start to blossom from that seed that's been planted. And that's for everybody out there, because I can sit there and say, like, in the last 5 years, I've hit my bumps in the roads, but fortunately, I've stayed with the faith. And that's the thing that keeps me going every day. So for the viewers out there that are listening, that maybe are starting to get that feeling and starting to get the first blessings, the first 30 days, maybe they're clean and sober, or they're just out and they're worshiping the Lord, man. Just know that continue that path. It gets better. And I think that myself, Pastor Rocha, and a lot of other people's, we are prime examples of that. I mean, I'm still learning. I mean, I'm no every Sunday hallelujah Christian, but I'm a Christian who tries to walk the path the way I know it best. And I can
Amen.
tell you are out there that if you're experiencing anything and you find the Lord in your heart, just know, man, it gets better. You just got to stay the course. Don't lose sight, because things start to get good, because that's what happens with too many people nowadays. Once life starts to get a little bit better, they forget who got them there. And a lot of times it's God that's going to get you there.
Yeah. So, my last thing I want to say is this, is that if you have a loved one that's incarcerated, whether they're in solitary, prison, county jail, federal prison, every Sunday sermon that I preach is dictated, and we send it free to inmates. We just want them um, to be able to get something that gives them some type of normalcy, and by receiving a dictated sermon, it lets them feel like they are there, and I think that's important, because if the government isn't doing anything to rehabilitate these men or these women, then a house of rest is maybe the little bit that we can do, is send a sermon out and just give them some kind of speak some kind of life, man, because in there you're made to feel like an animal. You're made to feel like you're less than. You're made to feel like nothing. And then what happens is you start to believe it. And then when you believe it, you might as well act like an animal, because that's what you are anyways. And so if you have a loved one, all you got to do is go to our website, www.houseofrestchurch.com, and you'll see the prison. It's like a prison ministry, and it'll ask you for your loved one's address. You got to give us everything, their inmate number, everything, or else it won't get to them. And every week they will receive a dictated sermon that I had preached on Sunday. Trust me, when your name gets called for mail, or when you get a letter dropped in your cell, that's a big deal, man. That literally can make your day, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I got to agree with that.
Yeah. So if you have a loved one that's incarcerated, please reach out to us and we will get them the Sunday sermons. Anything else you wanted to finish off with?
No, I enjoyed the conversation, man. I think we think parallel on this subject, and it's kind of
Yeah.
always good to hear someone else's point of view, because you were able to touch on some things that made me think, oh, you know what? That's exactly how I was feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why Flaco, that's why I wanted to talk about this, because we are a Christian channel. So we're not trying to be tough guys. This isn't a prison channel. This isn't, stories and crazy and stabbing people and this and that. And I know people flood to that because it's entertaining. Let's be honest. It's entertaining because it's not you, and but this is a different channel, man. We believe in Jesus Christ. I have no problem revealing my heart. I reveal my heart every time I preach on Sunday. So I don't have a problem saying, man, this is how I felt in solitary. This is how, I just want to be real, because the world is very superficial, and we can't be superficial. And I appreciate you, Flaco, for just you sharing, man, because this is probably not as normal for you, and I really do appreciate that, that because I know your heart and you truly want to guide other people away from these things. And many times you have to almost reveal your weaknesses in order for it to truly grab somebody's attention to really not go that way.
True.
You know, so I appreciate you, you know. And
Definitely, most definitely. You know, we appreciate you as well, man.
yeah. So all right, man. I'm gonna end this recording and hold on.